Hello and welcome to DFS Coach Talk. It's Friday, November 5th, 2021. I'm Andrew Hanson, back in the booth with Josh Crash Davis. Now we've got the Primetime podcast going, the Sunday and Monday night games. We've done the main slate podcast, so check that out if you haven't seen it already. And with these two games, Crash, I feel like I drew the short end of the stick here because I've got the road teams, Tennessee, big underdog against the Rams, and then the Bears, the big underdog against Pittsburgh. But I guess I'll just have to set you up for all the key plays.
Yeah, we'll make it work, and we always flip it the next week, so you'll get the better teams next week.
Yeah, it's all right. It's all good. Got to evaluate each team in all these slates, especially on the showdown slates, and every player, every position, since you have to play somebody from each team. So It's all part of the process, and that's what we're going to do here for you is go team by team, player by player, position group by position group for these showdown slates. Let's start with Tennessee and the Rams. Rather big news here with Mr. Derrick Henry, the cyborg, out for an extended period of time. Adrian Peterson is the new man in town, kind of the old guy in the NFL. Yeah. Man, he's been around forever. Talk about a machine in terms of longevity and all those carries. Apparently they're impressed, ready to get him out there. Probably going to get the lead role here. Not a great matchup. And across the board, Josh, I'm just not very fired up about Tennessee without Henry. It makes it really tough. The receivers are always banged up. But let's break it down here a little bit more specifically. Peterson, I'll just jump right in there because his price tag on DraftKings is $3,000. So, it's not a great matchup here against the Rams, but I think he will get the volume where you kind of need to play him. So that's my plan. 8,500 on FanDuel. It's a little bit of a different analysis, but looking primarily at DraftKings here tonight, I am going to probably play Peterson. We'll see if they activate anybody else. Deontay Foreman is a possibility, and then Jeremy McNichols, I think, will still be in that third down pass catching role. And I had to chuckle at his price, 7,800 on DraftKings. I think they slotted him in there just thinking he might be the guy to take over, but I just don't see that happening. In the last 3 weeks, he hasn't had a single carry. He's just out there to catch on third down. Only 7 carries all season. Mr. Henry's been pretty busy back there. But what's your thought on the backfield here? Do you think Peterson has a chance to be decent?
Yeah, I think that, I was kind of thinking that because he's only been there for a few days, I wasn't sure exactly how many opportunities he was going to get this week. But sounds like from what you're reading that, he's going to be out there. So you got to at least think that he's going to get some goal line opportunities if they're able to move down the field.
Right. We'll see about that. Rams just really strong here on both sides of the ball. They do give up some yardage defensively, but they may have Von Miller in town. And so that'll be interesting as they kind of load up and push for that Super Bowl entry potentially. Ramsey is a little bit dinged up as well here. We're recording this on Friday night, so we're not sure if they'll be at ultra full strength, but pretty tough matchup regardless. So let's talk about the passing situation here with Tannehill, of course, kind of low volume in general this year. Not a bunch of big games. Did get to 3 touchdowns last week in that overtime win over Indianapolis, but a negative 63% run or pass blocking situation here, according to Pro Football Focus. And then you've got the always banged up receivers. Right now, A.J. Brown, questionable with the knee issue. He had the big game last week with Julio sitting out. Julio is going to be back in there. He's much cheaper on DraftKings. But how about Julio this year? 5 games, no touchdowns yet. Only 17 catches for 301. Any reason to think that he'll turn it around and do some damage against the Rams?
Well, if A.J. Brown's out, he's going to be the main guy for sure. it's hard to know exactly what that offense is going to look like without Derrick Henry, but you would think that, especially if A.J. Brown's out, that Julio is going to get a lot of the targets, and they're just going to have to pass heavy,
Yeah, they're going to just have to, do their best. And I agree. This could be finally Julio's week to maybe not shine, but at least get in the end zone. And he's certainly affordable, so you could look there. After that, it is always a mess with Tennessee with these other pass catchers. They really circulate guys in, and it's not a big target volume to these guys. Chester Rogers in the slot, 1 target last week. Westbrook Akine, has had some okay games at his price. Got in the end zone last week. I kind of like Marcus Johnson. He got 5 targets last week, only 1 catch.
Yeah.
But if A.J. Brown is out, you could look at one of those guys because they're all really cheap on DraftKings. And then the tight ends, has become a 3-headed monster this year. Ferkser really has disappointed. Swaim has picked it up. Even Pruitt. Swaim had 4 catches last week, got a touchdown, but not a good matchup here on paper either. So, kind of the long-winded way of saying I'm looking at maybe Adrian Peterson, and maybe that's about it. On DraftKings, we'll see who's in, who's out with these receivers, but just not very fired up about the Tennessee side.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I think that it's going to be one of those slates where we have to put the value plays in from the Titans and then pay up for the Rams. It's kind of what I'm thinking for the lineup construction right now.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. So let's talk about these Rams and where you want to pay up.
Yeah, that's a good question. You've got a lot to pick from here. Matthew Stafford is 19,200 in the captain spot, 12,800 in the flex. So if you want to pay up, you could look at him. Really good matchup against Tennessee. They've allowed the 8th most passing yards per game at 267.4. He's thrown for over 300 yards in 3 of his last 4 games with 10 touchdowns and only 1 interception. So he's kind of having that MVP type season. Really enjoying being away from Detroit, I guess. But he's definitely having a good season. And then right behind him, of course, is Cooper Kupp, who's been the best wide receiver in fantasy this year. He's seen double-digit targets every week, basically, and going up against Tennessee, who have allowed the most fantasy points to wide receivers this year. And it's going to be pretty hard for me to get away from him unless you're just trying to be contrarian. I think that you definitely want to have Kupp in your lineups. And then if you decide not to, though, you could look at Robert Woods. He's the clear wide receiver 2 option for the Rams. He is questionable, so we'll have to see if he's going to play. But Woods is an option. And then if Woods is out, I definitely want to play Van Jefferson. He's seen 6 and 7 targets in the last 2 games. And I think there's a chance that we could see the Titans kind of do what they did with the Chiefs against Tyreek Hill and try and double Kupp. Which would open up some more opportunities for Jefferson too. So, and then Deshaun Jackson was released, so that's going to help, give him more opportunities, especially with him being the main deep ball option for the Rams. So,
yeah, I like that Stafford to Kupp connection here as much as always. And I do think it's going to be hard to get away from. Kupp's been so consistent, reliable, and almost perfect matchup rating on PFF. Remember, we were on Beasley against Tennessee, had that big game for us in the slot, and Kupp obviously is just at another level.
Yeah.
So, tough to fade those 2 guys. By the way, that price you mentioned for Stafford, even in the flex at 12.8, that one kind of surprised me. Oftentimes Kupp will be the most expensive Ram on a slate like this, but it is. Yeah, I mean, it's deserved because it is such a great matchup. And then what about a potential value receiver here and or Higbee? Any other pass catchers you're looking at?
Yeah, you could definitely look at Higbee. I think that's he's what? He's like in 7s, I think. Is that the price range he's at?
56 at the flex spot.
56 at the flex. Okay. Yeah, you could definitely look at Tyler Higbee. Now, if you really want to dig deep for some value, you've got a rookie by the name of Ben Skoranek, 1,500 in the captain spot, only 1,000 in the flex. And if Woods is out, then he would be the third option behind Kupp and Jefferson. So in a deep, GPP flyer type play, you could definitely look at Ben Skoranek.
Yeah, 3 catches last week. Definitely, that would work for 1,000 on DraftKings. Will you keep a spot open for a running back?
Yeah, Daryl Henderson has been very consistent this year. He scored about 16 fantasy points a game, actually coming off one of his best games last week against Houston, which if we see that game script where, LA gets a big lead, we could see him getting 20-plus carries this week against Tennessee. So that would favor him quite a bit. And, it's been a little bit of a tough matchup against running backs. Tennessee's allowed the 9th fewest points to running backs. But, with Derrick Henry out and possibly A.J. Brown out, I could really see Tennessee struggling to stay in this game. So,
yeah, agreed. And 70% run blocking advantage here for the Rams, according to PFF. Despite those numbers in terms of the production, they're really liking how things are going to line up for that offensive line. All right, well, it's looking like lots of Rams early and often. Before we transition to game 2, do you want to tell folks about the lineups that we give out for these games? I guess not. Josh is he's paused himself on me, but I will go through that. You can get full lineups on FanDuel and Yahoo for all of these showdown games, cash lineups and GPP. And then on DraftKings, we give out the core build for the GPP approach and the cash approach. So dfscoachtalk.com if you want to join us, and we'll get you those lineups before each slate, about 30 minutes before kickoff. So make sure to jump in this weekend, Saturday or Sunday in the morning, so you get the main slate lineups as well for week 9. So dfscoachtalk.com to sign up, and we'll send you an email and get you into our Discord. All right.
What were you trying to say? I lost you right when you were asking me.
I was asking if you wanted to talk about the lineups we give out.
Oh, I would have, but
so, yeah,
I guess I answered that question. So
yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So game 2, we have the Bears traveling to Pittsburgh for Monday Night Football. And how about this total of only 39? Wow. Pittsburgh favored by 6.5. So that does not leave many points for Chicago with the implied total. But can't be that surprised. 3-5, 3 straight losses. Pittsburgh 4-3 with 3 straight wins. So these two teams going in the opposite directions. And I get to start with the visiting team here again. So let me talk about these Bears. Frustrating for Bears fans to see this offense that's 294 yards per game on average. So just almost a non-existent passing attack. The rushing game is good. And I guess the positive here is that Fields had a real strong game last week against San Fran, his best on the season, 175 yards passing, threw for a score, and then had a tremendous rushing touchdown where it looked like they were going to sack him, and he got out of it and made a terrific run, showing his promise. So for me, the highlight here, the high-level approach to this game, since we don't have pricing yet on either site as we record this Friday night, could be a Fields game, maybe one of his receivers, and then load up on Pittsburgh, just sort of like that Sunday night game approach that we have cooking up here. But Fields, because he carried it 10 times for over 100 yards last week, he's sort of the key to really the passing game and the rushing game. So I prefer him over the regular running backs, if you will. Herbert has really been strong here lately, but Pittsburgh has given up the 5th fewest fantasy points to running backs, only 2 touchdowns. And it looks like David Montgomery might be back out there soaking up some carries. He's trying to get back from that knee issue. Damian Williams, on the other hand, looking like he may not play because of his knee. So I think Montgomery will take a little bit away from Herbert, just make it really tough there. So what are your thoughts here on the non-pass catchers for the Bears? Any interest there?
It does make a lot of sense that you would want to stay away from that running back. Is Damian Williams, is he in the picture? Is he out?
I think he's likely going to be out with injury.
Okay. So you got the split carries at least, between Herbert and Montgomery.
Right.
So it would make sense to avoid that.
Yeah.
I just don't know how they're going to attack Pittsburgh because they've been pretty run, dependent lately. So
yeah, they have, exactly. It's tough because they want to run it, but Pittsburgh's good at stopping it. If they do go to the air with any success, I think it's probably Mooney and Robinson. Although Robinson has been very disappointing this year, but
yeah,
Pittsburgh most vulnerable in the slot, and those two guys spend most of their time there, or the most time there. Goodwin's more on the outside. So we'll see how the pricing plays out on DraftKings. If Mooney is around mid 7K range, I could see myself pairing him up with Fields and then heading over to the Pittsburgh side. But just disappointing group here in terms of production this year. And then the tight ends, they were decent last week, but again, a below average matchup. Little narrative potentially with Jesse James heading back to Pittsburgh, coming in after a good game for him, 3 catches and a score. So that's a possibility again if you want to go with that cheap passing connection on the Chicago side. But what's your thought here with the pass catchers?
Yeah, I would definitely, if Mooney's been lining up primarily in the slot, that would probably be the top guy. And then for value, I would look at probably one of those cheap tight ends. I think that's a good value play.
Yeah, Mooney, 32% of his routes in the slot, Robinson, 42%. So together, they're in there the most. All right, well, let's talk about the Pittsburgh side that I think we both kind of like a little bit better.
Yeah, so the first thing we have to find out is whether or not Ben Roethlisberger is going to play.
Big piece of information.
He's dealing with a shoulder injury. If not, we're going to be seeing Mason Rudolph out there, which is going to change the passing game, obviously, quite a bit for Pittsburgh. And they may just rely completely on Najee Harris at that point. But assuming that Ben does play, the Bears have allowed the 12th most fantasy points to quarterbacks. So you could be looking at some options there in the passing game. Deontay Johnson would obviously be the top option in the passing game. The Bears have allowed the 5th most fantasy points to wide receivers. He's been heavily targeted all season. He saw 13 targets in each of his last 2 games. He actually didn't score a touchdown in either of those games, so he could be due to find the end zone, in this game. And then with Najee Harris, I mean, that's going to be probably the highest owned player on the slate, I'm sure. But he's been seeing Derrick Henry type, workload numbers, 26, 24, and 23 carries in his last 3 games, and has also been targeted in the passing game. So he's probably going to be the most expensive player. I would just about guarantee it, in this game. But definitely been producing at numbers that would be worth that price.
Yeah, I had to chuckle at Harris's usage there and look at the backs last week. McFarland, Ballage, and Snell all had 1 touch, and he had 29. So I do agree it'll be, I'm going to say something like 11,000 for Harris, and those other guys will be somewhere between probably 200 and 18 to 2,000. I think Fields might be right around that same price as Harris. That'll be fun to see.
Could be. Yeah. Could be, for sure.
Yeah. But I also agree with you on Johnson here. Real strong play. He's a guy that I will consider as the captain on DraftKings. PPR, he can really, load up the points.
Definitely.
9, 10 catches, close to 100 yards, a score, and if so, then he's the guy you want there.
Yeah.
Depending on how the pricing all plays out. But how about the rest of the crew here?
In a GPP, you could look at Chase Claypool. He's only been seeing about 5 to 7 targets a game lately, and he hasn't been putting up huge numbers. Like I said, this is a favorable matchup as the Bears have allowed the 5th most fantasy points to wide receivers. As a GPP pivot to Deontay Johnson, I could see Claypool as an option. And then for me, the second pass catcher I'm looking at is Pat Freiermuth, the rookie tight end, especially if Eric Ebron's out. He's seen 7 targets in each of his last 2 games, had 4 receptions for 44 yards and a touchdown last week. And then in week 7 before the bye, he had 7 receptions for 58 yards against Seattle. The only concern there is going to be with Chicago. They've allowed the second fewest fantasy points to tight ends. So that would be the concern. But I still think that Freiermuth will see the second most targets behind Johnson.
Yeah, I think that's a safe prediction. Unfortunately here for Ben and the pass catchers, it's sort of trending in the wrong direction in terms of the downfield passing, the overall volume. I mean, 8 touchdowns on the season and 4 interceptions.
Mm-hmm.
He's only had 300 yards once. He's only had 2 touchdowns once. And, that downfield threat with Claypool just hasn't been working out. So it has been all about these short passes to Johnson and the tight ends.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that's a key place to look on this slate. We'll see if Ebron is playing. He is questionable, like you kind of alluded to. Didn't play the last week, and Gentry actually had 3 catches on 5 targets. So, Ben wants to use those guys and just get it out quick. He doesn't want to get hit. He wants to try to make it through the season.
Yeah.
So
he's already dealing with an injury on top of it. So that's
right.
That's
assuming he's even out there.
Yeah.
Which I think he will be.
Yeah.
He'll find a way. So, all right. Well, that covers the 2-game slate here. If you like these podcasts, hit the thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. We'd love to have you tune in here. We do 11 podcasts a week in front of the paywall. If you want the lineups, dfscoachtalk.com to sign up. We'll get you in there with an email. Josh, any final thoughts here on the primetime slates?
No, I'm definitely looking forward to watching that first game, especially. I think it'll be interesting to see how Tennessee plays without Derrick Henry. And we've had pretty much every primetime game somehow stay pretty close. So it'll be interesting to see if that happens once again. So
yeah, I'm looking forward to it as well. That new dynamic with Tennessee and the new faces potentially with the Rams, and if Tennessee can find a way to keep it close, that'll be a big challenge. So, all right, great stuff. Thank you all for tuning in, and make sure to tune in this weekend for the NBA podcasts that continue to roll out 7 days a week. So, on behalf of Josh Crash Davis and the rest of the DFS Coach Talk team, I'm Andrew Hanson. We'll see you next time as we look to crush it in DFS.